Hope is not blind optimism. Hope is not ignorance of the barriers and hurdles and hazards that stand in your way. Hope's just the opposite. I know how hard it will be to provide health care to every single American. Insurance companies, drug companies, they don't want to give up their profits. I know it won't be easy to have an energy policy that makes sense for America because the oil companies like writing the energy bills. I know that alleviating poverty or making sure all our children can learn or eliminating the scourge of racism in our society, none of those things lend themselves to simple solutions. I know because I fought on the streets as a community organizer in poor neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago alongside those without jobs or without prospects for the future. I have fought in the courts as a civil rights attorney for those who had been denied opportunity on the job or denied access to the ballot box. I've seen good legislation die because, well, I've seen that too. I've seen good legislation die because good intentions weren't enough, because they weren't fortified with a political majority and political will. I've seen this country's judgment clouded by fear. I know how easily a country can be misled when it is afraid. I know how hard it is. Everybody here understands how difficult it is to bring about true change, change that we can believe in. But I also know this, that nothing in this country worthwhile has ever happened except somebody somewhere decided to hope. That's how this country was founded, because a group of patriots decided they were going to take on the British Empire. Nobody was putting their money on them. That's how slaves and abolitionists resisted that evil system. That's how a new president was able to chart a course to ensure that this nation would no longer remain half slave and half free. That's how the greatest generation defeated fascism and overcame a Great Depression. That's how women won the right to vote. That's how workers won the right to organize. That's how young people and old people and middle-aged folks were willing to walk instead of ride the bus, and folks came down on freedom rides. That's what hope is. Imagining and then fighting for and struggling for and sometimes dying for what didn't seem possible before. There's nothing naive about that. There are no false hopes in that. I don't believe in false hopes. Imagine if John F. Kennedy had looked up at the moon and said, well, that's too far. False hopes, we can't go there. If Dr. King had stood on the Lincoln Memorial and said, y'all go home, we can't overcome. There's no such thing as false hopes. But what I know deep in my heart is that we cannot bring about change unless we are unified, unless we do it together. Change does not happen from the top down in America or anywhere else. It happens from the bottom up. It happens because ordinary people dream extraordinary things. It's because all of you decide that change must come. That I know. It wasn't just one voice that shouted out before the walls of Jericho. All the voices came together. Chorus of voices. That's what gives me hope. Not just those who ascend to high office, but the changes that are happening in ordinary places. The stories that give me my hope don't happen in the spotlight. When I think about Dr. King, I suspect he was sustained not by having dinner with presidents, not by getting a Nobel Peace Prize, but coming back to church and seeing the mothers of the church and the deacons those who maintained their dignity were standing up straight in the face of injustice. That's where he drew his hope. He saw God in their faces. Those stories don't happen on a presidential stage. They happen in the quiet corners of our lives. They happen in the moments we least expect